Britt, your book title is so compelling. Align your mind. And I just know we are going to have a great conversation. So thank you for joining me here on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me and bearing with all my multiple parts of my minds that are hanging out with us right now and interfering too.
And all of our parts that show up. So here's your book. So for people who are watching, but I'm holding up Align Your Mind, Tame Your Inner Critic, and Make Peace with Your Shadow using the power of parts work. So first, congratulations on your second book. The Science of Stuck is your first one. It's on my bookshelf in my other office, and it's just been, I mean, yeah, your stories are so powerful. But let's just even sink into what does it actually mean to align your mind?
And I called it align your mind intentionally, not fix it, not change it, not erase it, not kill your ego, because alignment is about the relationship that we have with ourselves. When our tires are aligned, they're in right relationship to each other and our car goes. When our spine is aligned, everything is in its place and life, our bodies work easier. And I think we're all taught that we have to hate these parts of ourselves or tell the inner critic to shut up and kill your ego. It's all very aggressive. And what if we didn't need to amputate parts of us? What if we could align them and have life work even when it's loud in our, inside our heads?
I love that idea of alignment instead of this, how do we get rid of something or how do we fix it and make it go away? Because that's what a lot of our clients come in initially saying is, I feel this experience like anxiety and I don't want to feel this anymore.
Right. And I hear, and you hear, we all hear it, right? I hate the part of me that scrolls all night. I hate the part of me that binges on food. I hate my anxiety. I hate my depression. And the problem is if you're in a fight with a part of yourself, you're never going to win. And so we need a different way to think about thinking, which is why I love parts work so much. And I didn't invent it. Parts work has been around forever. I just took the internal family systems model by Dr. Richard Schwartz and went rogue with it.
So let's even do a little dabbling in that for people who don't know about internal family systems. I said this morning to my husband, oh, I'm sitting with Britt. We're going to be talking about parts work. And he said, what's parts work? I said, it's IFS, of course. And he says, what's IFS? So let's pull that back just a little bit and tell us what is internal family systems?
I always say to people outside the wellness world, it's the most amazing method you've never heard of.
Yeah.
And so if you've seen the movie Inside Out, that's parts work. That movie is actually based on that model of therapy that we were talking about, IFS. And it's the idea that your mind is not this one evil blob that's out to destroy you, but you've got this very colorful cast of characters inside your head running around. And when anxiety is running the show, life's not going to work well. But anxiety is not the problem. It's a part of you. It's needed. We just don't want it behind the steering wheel. Parts work helps you reorganize all those characters inside your head so your life runs better.
Okay, so let's break this open a little bit more. So parts, how do they show up? What do they do? What do they sound like?
When people say, well, how do I know if I have parts? And my husband is cute because he goes, well, I don't really have any parts, but I support you. I'm like, that's one of your parts is showing. So you'll know that you've got a part of you that's in action if you are feeling anything less than your most competent, capable adult self. You know, those days where you're absolutely killing it. You're like, I've got the laundry in the dryer and it's put away and the school pickup and the work thing, and I am in flow. That doesn't usually last. If you're feeling anything less than confident, capable, and open-minded, and not calm in the terms of how, but regulated and able to make decisions. If you're not feeling that, it's safe to assume one of your parts has showed up.
I know one part in my journey of this work that I do in the writing author space, in podcasting as well. I have this critic part. Can you talk to us about what people's critics sound like?
You have the critic. I have the critic. I saw a thing with Michelle Obama that she has a critic, and it's a very human experience. And this idea that we evolve and heal to a place where the critical voice, that self-doubting, they're going to think you're a fraud, that voice doesn't ever go away. And again, the challenge is not to get rid of it. The challenge is to recognize that it's trying to help. If you imagine your inner critic like a toddler going, I hate you, you stink, and less like a god of your existence telling you who you are, it becomes a lot less urgent to listen to it. When even right now as we're talking, my voice is going, oh my God, her background is so cool. I want like a textured dark gray background. My background sucks. As we're talking, I'm hearing that. It's not a problem. It's okay. I noticed that it's there and I could choose to have a conversation with it. I can choose to indulge it or I can choose to notice it and move on with my day. But we're not taught that you don't actually have to listen to every single voice or follow every single impulse. And you can have a relationship with them just like you would any human.
Yes. And when we even just call that out, it just really brings this humanity to people in general. And it's interesting to hear what your part was doing right there, because my part often at the start of podcasts is, oh no, am I a good interviewer? Do I even know how to run a podcast? Nobody's going to listen to this. One download, Tracy, you'll get one download. It's, I'll be thrown out. And it's so interesting when you can start noticing, and I love that word, the noticing of what your mind is doing, and then also using the parts language is noticing what that part is saying, what that part has this theme in it, or when even that part shows up.
Exactly. And even on the more extreme cases, I mean, everyone has a critic. I have OCD and complex trauma and a whole bunch of other things. So sometimes the voices inside my head say really, really obnoxious things that are, if I didn't know what was happening, would be really terrifying. And we call them intrusive thoughts, which I don't like because I'm like, they're not really intruders. They're traumatized parts of you that don't have any other skills but to say, run up on stage and do something insane or say something inappropriate in this moment. But when you notice that you're not your thoughts, and every mindfulness tradition has this idea that you're not your thoughts are not you are the observer. And it's true with parts work. I can notice those really scary thoughts and go, okay, I probably need some food right now, or I'm probably overloaded sensory wise, and I probably need to take a minute and back off. But I don't have to take those thoughts at literal face value. And that's so powerful. It's like, wait a minute, maybe I don't suck and everything isn't horrible and my wall is just fine, even though it's not the cool one that you have.
It's so interesting when we create that separation from it. And it is something that we don't learn on our own. This is not part of a school education program. It's not part of, even parenting. How are we supposed to know that unless here you are listening to this episode, right? But then there's this experience in front of you. So I often think of my kids, and one of them, I talk about dials and how, like, in essence, I'm saying parts, right? And one of my kids has this really big future planning part. And this one, and I intentionally don't tell if it's my guy or my girl, because just to give them a bit more privacy when I tell stories. But this one is all about looking at the future. And I know where it's coming from. It's this kind of anxiety. It's this need to plan. And so what I'm doing, and again, I'm a therapist, so I'm doing this work with my clients every day. I've learned the IFS model. I've worked with it within myself and how powerful that is. So here I am with my little one saying, oh, that's a really interesting part. And it's just this idea that and for people listening, I'm taking my hands together and I'm pulling them apart, right? That there's this part of you that shows up here. It's not you, but wow, this part's being really loud right now. Can we turn it down? Can we? So I'd love to hear, well, maybe I'll back up a little bit more. I'm just thinking of the pieces in your book. What types of parts show up for people? Is there a category? Are there different types that you talk about?
Yeah, and it's wild that we're not taught this. And to your point, kids are very inherently connected to their parts. When I walked out of the movie Inside Out and out of the second one, all of the kids were like, yeah, that checks out. And the parents were like, mind blown. Like, what? Kids, when you say to them, it sounds like you have a part that's feeling a feeling, they're like, yeah, duh. And so we have an infinite potential of parts, kind of like our body. We have a lot more parts than anyone not in the medical fields could ever name. I can't name every cell, organ, and tissue. But broadly speaking, we have the self, capital S self, which is the observer, the I, the thing that's not the part, source, consciousness, whatever you want to call it. And then broadly speaking, we all tend to have a critical part or parts. We tend to have a part that feels really young and small. So people say inner child. I'm like, forget child. You've got like inner children. Because some days I'm a terrified toddler. Other days I'm like a shy 8-year-old. We have younger parts. We have angry teenage parts that are still in their hormonal, who am I? What is this world I'm in? So little parts, teenage parts, newly in the adult world parts, when you're feeling totally overwhelmed by life, which is a normal feeling, and you're disconnected from your choices, likely that's a early 20 somethings part. Like I get overwhelmed at my age, but if I'm like, I can't do anything and I have no options and everything is impossible, I am not conscious of where I am and how old I am. So I would say we've got critical parts, teenage parts, and younger parts, broadly speaking.
I love these moments in therapy. I'm thinking of a couple that I recently worked with where they escalated in front of me. And there are times in couples therapy where the escalation can sometimes it comes out of nowhere. And my job is often the traffic controller of stopping it. There are other times where I need to let it play out a little bit so I can see what's going on. And so after it played out a little bit, I had stopped it and I said, wow, we're really coming from our teenager parts right here, aren't we? Because there was this like anger and this righteousness. And it's like why can't you see me? Why can't you just let me go to the party that all my friends are going, but you're not being fair. And now I have to, right? Like, it's just this like, and you can hear it in the words, you can hear it in the tone, you can hear it in the feeling that's coming up.
It's so wild. I am convinced that all adults who are fighting unskillfully are actually in their teenage parts. That being able to manage my own teenage parts and recognize the teenage parts of another person. Anyone who's ever argued with an actual teenager knows that's an exercise in futility. Like, you're not going to speak logic to a teenage brain on fire. And the same is true politically. The same is true emotionally. And you can see people not acting like capable, intelligent adults. They're acting like really, really hormonal teenagers. It's very, very obvious. Once you see it, it's hard to unsee it.
Oh my goodness. You're right about that. It really is and when I think about the teenager, well, I mean, my 10-year-old has also been a lot of like, I know that already, mom. Like, oh, do you? And I'm getting the 15-year-old response already, right? But the teenager wants to be all knowing. They want their autonomy and their independence. They want their opinions to be heard. They want to be seen. It can be a really incredible time when we as adults don't then meet their teenager self with our teenager part.
Oh, mic drop moment. And that's what happened. I have compassion for it. I don't have kids. I don't have biological kids. I have a multitude of inner kids. But it's tough when you have an actual human teenager mirroring your own teenage wounds back to you. And then you do regret. Most people who don't know that they have parts will regress to the level of the part they're arguing with. And then you've got not an adult and a teenager working out life. You've got two teenagers going head to head for the title.
Right, right. So okay, so that's kind of with the teenager, but then I'm thinking of the two adults with the teenager and how then we don't learn those really powerful communication tools, but even not just about the tools, because then I'm thinking before we get to communication tools, because that's between me and somebody else, I also have to do some of this inside work first. So talk a little bit more about the kind of what the parts might be doing for us or what roles they might be playing, or maybe even how we start to understand what they need.
It's such a good question. And it can feel really overwhelming, right? You're like, okay, I have this entire system of people I didn't know I had. And now what do I do? So before getting into a conversation of any kind, I say, like, do a pre-flight check. Before you go up into a conversation, check and see, how old do I feel right now? And you don't need to know which part, and you don't need to know their core wound or their needs. Just ask yourself, how old do I feel right now? And roughly speaking, you're going to be able to quickly go, okay, I feel like I'm out of control 15-year-old, or I feel like I am a terrified 2-year-old. And you're going to get a sense of, if you're anything other than your present chronological self, take a minute before having that conversation. And so with our own parts, I would tell people, don't start with the most difficult, highest trauma activation. That's not a great way to go about a new practice. It's sort of like if you were to walk into a party where you didn't know people, you're not going to walk up to the most intimidating looking person in the room. You might try to find a friendly face and then go over and talk to them. everyone listening to this has at least one part who's curious and seeking out information to help make their lives better. Maybe start with the part of you that chose to listen to a podcast because we like that part. We like all our parts, but that part's an easy, friendly face in a crowd. Maybe not start with the level 10 shadow parts because it's like working out. You don't start with a marathon. You start by taking a walk. Parts work is the same.
I'm thinking of the inner critic part. That was one that was really accessible for me and that I could start working with, where I could start saying, oh, wow, look at who just showed up right now. You're trying to take over the driver's seat. What's happening here right now? And sometimes what was really helpful for me in getting to know my parts and understanding what role they were playing in what I was doing or experiencing is to ask, what are you fearing?
Oh,
Well, like
that's so good.
what's the fear right here?
And that speaks to your question, which I didn't answer about roles. It helps to start with the assumption that every part of you is playing a role to protect you. There is not one part of you that is trying to make your life miserable. Yes, we do behaviors that make our lives difficult, but every single part has a protective or defensive or self-preserving function. And that's a really, really good piece of news because you don't have to fight parts that are trying to protect you, but we do need to retrain them so they have accurate information. A critical part that's like, you don't do the thing, you're going to fail, they're going to hate you, may not know that you're not 4 years old with no resources. They may not know that the launching of your business might not be fatal if it doesn't work. And so we want parts to have updated information because if you ask any part what's its fear, likely it's going to be, rejection, abandonment, or death, or some flavor of that.
And that's the underneath piece, which then I like to go to that next place of, so what do I need? What does this part of me need right here so that they're not having this protest or they don't have so much power or they're not trying to take over what's happening?
And sometimes parts just need to be heard. It's not true all of the time, but I had a kids practice when I started my career. And with the teenagers, there was no, let's do an intervention or let me teach you a tool. It was a lot of, I'm just going to hold space and listen because teenagers have people yelling at them to do stuff all day. Sometimes the very active acknowledging a part's thought is enough to deactivate its charge. When that doesn't work, then you go to the tools and the skills and boundaries and all of the things that we do. But sometimes self-validation is actually enough. All right, I hear you. Thank you, critical thought. I've got it from here.
That's my brain is doing the crossing of models into the acceptance and commitment model, where it's like it's the diffusion, it's the separation of those thoughts, and then how it's like, okay, so then what's next after that? If I'm not holding so tightly to this, if this is just a passenger on the train with me, but it's not taking over the ride, then what can I do next? And I think that is such an important piece when it comes to parts. I'm thinking of the inner critic and how this person might say, well, okay, but how do we just get rid of this? This isn't, don't like this part, don't want to hang out with it. Now what?
It's so tricky. I remember thinking that. So I have a lot of compassion on the desire to just get rid of these very uncomfortable parts. So I would say that's not an option. So, in trying to figure out what to do about anything, we have to start with what are our options here? We may not like them, but getting rid of your inner critic is not actually an option unless you're high on psychedelics, but that's a temporary state and that wears off. So on your menu of options with your inner critic, get rid of it is not one of them. Same thing with anxiety. Create a new relationship with it. Learn to speak its language. Learn to have a position of leadership where you understand what it's doing, but you can make decisions separate from it. That's sort of the only things on the menu. And you don't have to like that, but that is just how brains brain.
Okay, tell me a bit more about that. Learn to speak its language. What does that mean?
So the inner critic, in whatever form or format it's yelling at you, let's just assume everything it's saying, if you put the filter of protection on it, is really saying, I'm afraid, I don't want to die, don't leave me, right? So what would you say to someone that comes at you saying, I'm afraid, I don't want to die, don't leave me? First thing you could do is say, okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, how true is it that this is going to be lethal? And I love scaling questions, trying to figure out on a 1 to 10, with 10 being fully true, 1 being fully false. Most things are going to fall in the middle. And when we get into the black and white thinking of the inner critic is either right or it's wrong, we're going to get stuck because there's always a little bit of truth in a critical voice. On a 1 to 10, how true is it? That's how you start the relationship. And it's like any relationship with a person. If you want to get to know someone, you ask them questions. Oh, thank you, critic. I hear you. You're trying to keep me alive. Well, where did you learn that we can't do this or else we're going to die? Like, where'd you pick that up? When was the last time you felt this way? How true is it right now? And let's figure out what our choices are together. So I'm a big fan of we have to become allies with the critic and even use its voice as a coach. The inner critic properly related to is not going to say you suck. It will say, all right, this is not who you are. This is not what you want. Let's get up. Let's get in the game. Let's do something different. And that's good. A good coach doesn't coddle, but they also don't beat the crap out of the person they're trying to coach.
It's a powerful reframe of how you can then I really like that, Britt, in the sense of how do you use their language? It's almost like let's shore up together or sit beside each other. And it's not the you suck, which gosh, how many times do we say this to ourselves? And that shows up for so many of us, including me, but instead saying, okay, this is important. But what am I missing here? Can I acknowledge that this is hard and you're trying something that's different? And, it not going the way you wanted to, or you needing more skills doesn't mean you suck.
Right. But sometimes you suck is the only available language your critic has, which is why,
Mm.
how true is this? So if I was going to go, I don't know, helicopter skiing, I don't know how to ski. My inner critic tells me you're going to die. On a 1 to 10, that's probably a 9.5 or a 10 because I don't know how to do that skill. So I could say, all right, this is actually a lot of bit true. So then it's, well, what are my choices for up leveling my skills? And then I've turned you suck into I actually do need a little bit of work on this area. And that goes down to less lethal things like writing a book. When I first started, it's who do you think you are to write a book? You've never done that. You don't know what you're doing. On a 1 to 10, that was a 9. I'd never done it before. What are my choices? Okay, I can read about how to do it. I can hire a coach. I can go to workshops. I can level up my skills. And so translating the critic's voice into what's the nugget of truth and how do I partner with the voice makes the critic less likely to scream at you the next time because it trusts that you're going to listen.
So knowing you've now just gone through, this is actually your third book out. How was your partnership with your inner critic? I'm asking for a friend. The friend is me.
It was so much worse. It was like, you already used that storytelling device and you've already done this and you can't who do you think you are to try again? You've already written 95,000 words. You are out of words, girl. There is nothing, you've got nothing left to give. You have been wrung out dry and this is a big mistake. You should have, stayed in you did it twice is enough. Like what the actual hell do you think you're doing? Writing the inner critic chapter brought up all the pain.
I can only imagine. There was one chapter in my first book, and after putting it all on the page, so much shame came over me for first having this experience and then B, sharing it. And then I think the last piece is, well, how did you even do this? You don't have a right to tell these stories, all of those things. But I often joke with my husband now on the heels of my second book coming out this fall is that I'll say, I don't know how I wrote a book. I don't know how I did it. And because in the process, it's this isn't enough. I can't do this. This is nothing. No one wants to read it. And it's just such a wild experience to really just, I had one client that her expression always stuck with me around tolerance to feelings. And it was the take the ticket or buy the ticket, take the ride. You've already bought the ticket. You've already bought it. So now you got to get onto the ride. You're in line already. I have a fear of roller coasters. And that to me is no, I am backing out. I don't want.
It's so true. But the expectation that voice calms down at whatever point, you've already written a book. It should be easy for you. If I had told myself that, I would have gone into freeze. I would have shut down. Well, also because part of my critical voice was, this is Dr. Richard Schwartz's model that you have then totally torn apart. And not only is no one going to read it, but he's going to sue you. You're going to get canceled and you're going to get a cease and desist letter. So my critic was very amplified, but knowing I could take the ride, even with the protesting voice, it's kind of like putting a kid in a car seat. Kid's going to scream. And it's like, I know you don't want to be in the car seat and mom's job is safety. Car seat buckle on. The kid doesn't have to like it, but you're going in the car seat. You're getting on the roller coaster. You're writing the book anyway, but you're doing it in partnership and out of love.
And you've just tapped on why we do the thing. which is around our values and around what we find meaningful and important. And so there's this choice here where we let parts take over. And that's when I think, coming back full circle around alignment, that when you are not living attuned to what matters to you, you're in misalignment. And so when parts take over and you believe it and you buy into the stories you tell yourself, or those, I'm switching into act language, but you buy into those parts and they're the truth, right? They're all standing around you in the room and you're kind of just stuck on the couch like, I can't do anything. It's more the connection to the self, which you've already highlighted, the piece that says, who am I? And how do I, from a place of compassion and connection and curiosity, how do I then move into this life?
Oh, I love that. Which is why the idea that this is a self-parenting exercise, that you're treating every part of you, even the ones you hate, like they're one of your children with the same skill set. Validate the feeling, set the boundary, honor their not wanting to do a thing, but know if you value safety, you're going to buckle your kid in the seatbelt, even if they don't want to, even if they tell you, I hate you, you stink, this is terrible, I don't like it. It's like, I know, I get it. And I value safety. So we're going to put the buckle on. If you value being a person who suits up and shows up to the things that are important to you, it's going to be feel the toddler's tantruming and take the step anyway. It's easier said than done, but it's so worth it.
I think a lot of people find that easier in some way when it comes to car seat because it's safety related. So when I think of that, but it becomes harder then when it's about decisions for ourselves, and that choosing of self in there becomes really difficult.
Oh, it's so hard when it's not clear that psychological safety is not just about people honoring who you are, but psychological safety is, am I doing the things I say I'm about? Am I not doing the things that I say I'm not about? And what's more psychologically safe than honoring your own boundaries or choosing? And it's not about being selfish or self-focused, but it feels really uncomfortable when you can't see. It's sort of like the idea that, zebras in the wild running away from lions are having a flight response. They're not struggling with focus. They just can't move. But when it comes to the complexity of our minds, it's a lot harder to see the lions. And so we feel lazy. We feel like we can't settle. We feel like there's something wrong with us. But yeah, it is just as urgent for us to listen and attend to our own parts as it is to our children. But it's harder to see it because it's so much more nuanced and murky and complex.
Something that I love about parts work is around this piece of you are not your parts. Can we just sit in that for a minute? And can you share a little bit more about what that means?
Yeah, and I'm curious to know how you hold space for it, because this is where we sort of leave the land of the clinical and the evidence-based, and we get into the what is consciousness and who's the I when we say I, and what is source? And it's no one knows what consciousness is. There's not a scientist, a philosopher. There's nobody that has locked it down. So I'm not going to try. But I've seen, and I'm sure you have too, that there does seem to be some sort of center in every human, soul, self, like whatever you want to call it, all Christ consciousness, higher self. I don't care what you call it. There seems to be this place inside every human that is sort of above and beyond the parts that make us human and something that connects us to something greater. I don't know what it is, but I can sense it when I see it and I can sense it when I'm in it. And I love that parts work is a way of bringing that sense out. I don't know. How do you make sense of it?
Yeah, that connectedness to the inner self. It's like coming into ourselves. I often think about how I can float around a day and there's all these thoughts floating in my mind. They stir up images and memories, the to-do list, the anxieties of the future of what I'm supposed to do. And then I can come onto a yoga mat and just be in my body. And that is the connectivity to me. And it's the listening moment to moment. It's the, what's that just showed up? That's really interesting. Do I want to hang out with that or not? And then noticing, oh, I'm forcing myself to try to move my body like that person over there. You're comparing yourself. Come back into you. And one of the ways actually that helped me through my early days of the PhD was to do yoga 2 times a week. I was walking to and from a yoga center. It was at a time where I was 23 years old. I was filled with fear and fear of rejection, fear of failure. And it was tied to, oh my gosh, what would other people think of me if I say I can't do this PhD? Like, this is just too hard. I don't know what I'm doing. I'll never get this done. I'm a fraud. I can't be here. And then when I came to yoga, being on the mat and like those four corners was always this, who am I? And that is, I think, what I come back to. And I'm just talking on the fly, Britt, but it's the breath, the in and out. That's who I am. So the hard parenting moment where my baby is like not stopping crying and we're going on an hour and I don't know what's wrong and I'm thinking I'm the worst mom ever. This is never going to end. And what's going to be like in 10 years and my life is over. And I come into breath, in and out, and it's constantly changing. And that to me is connection to self.
I love that. The you that's not your parts, the you
Yeah.
that notices the parts, the you that tends to the parts, the you that is not the parts. When we
Mm.
connect with that, everything works. Life doesn't get easier, but the experience I have of being a human in a life gets a
Yeah.
whole lot better.
Mm. If people are listening and wondering, okay, but where do I even start? They're going to check out your book. That's a starting place. There's so many great exercises in here. And I love how your books have a lot of charts that help us move through things. But I'm curious for listeners today, where would somebody start in terms of this parts work and feeling more aligned?
Ugh, well, if it's not the book, this is actually a hot take, and I don't know if you agree, but I'll put it out there. And I'm actually super impressed with ChatGPT's ability to replicate parts work as a practice partner. Nothing replaces human connection. I'm not worried that's going to take over and no one will ever want to speak to another human again. But if you're really struggling and you want to start, tell ChatGPT, I want to start with parts work, but I don't know where to start. Can you give me a simple prompt that I can do? And it's not bad. If you say using the internal family systems model or the parts work idea in therapy, it really can generate some really fun, easy, low lift, free, no human energy required to connect. It's a good starting. It's not a good ending place, but it's a great starting place.
It's the place of curiosity. It's not the forever solution in that, but it's in some ways you're typing it into Google
Yeah.
and the most recent blog post is coming up on parts work. And you're like, oh yes, this what's the exercise I can do? And I love that idea because it's accessible. So thank you. Thank you for putting
Yeah.
that one out there.
With the caveat that we don't know enough about AI to make a judgment call, but I do know right now, today, if you're listening and you can't go to therapy and you've got too many things on your plate to read a book, like ChatGPT is a pretty good starting place.
Yeah, it's the let's make this more bite size. How do we then? I heard someone say recently snacks. Like you're trying to find snacks rather than trying to have the tasting menu out all night on a Friday night when you just don't have time for that. How do we have a snack? How do we find that one thing? And it's interesting because I know a lot of people will say, "Oh, I bought the book, but then I didn't read it." And well, then it doesn't help. So how do we find something that's going to be helpful? Okay, Britt, tell us more about your book coming out, where people can find
Yeah.
you.
And well, I hope your people know where to find you because you're
Yes,
awesome.
that's
Very easy
fine
to.
to find you.
Well, I did write the book so that if you only need a snack at the end are bullet points and like 5-minute exercises. If you want the deep dive, that's in there for you too. So you can buy the book, Align Your Mind, anywhere you buy books. And you can find me on Instagram at Britt Frank or my website, brittfrank.com.
Awesome. I'm so grateful for our conversation today. And I'm just thinking for listeners, bringing in your attention to what parts might be showing up as you were listening today, maybe as you're transitioning to the next thing after you close out this podcast episode, just starting to bring awareness to, what part is that is showing up for me right now? Britt, thank you so much for this conversation. I'm grateful to have you here on the podcast.
Thank you so much.